Hey, BZ. Hey, sweet. So if you see me randomly saying hi to people, it's because we're also using the chat that's right next to the video. So Discord has this new functionality where you can click on the top right and it toggles the chat. Whereas we usually we had to use a separate a separate text channel. Whereas now everything is next to each other, which is much more convenient. Okay. So are we waiting a minute?
A minute and 16 seconds.
Okay. Okay. Let's just, give one extra minute for people to join. I'm sure no one will complain. We give them a little bit more time. Yeah, it's Lane. It's like finding a rare Pokemon in a pack, a super rare Pokemon in a pack. Going office hours and finding Lane. So this is a special one.
Lane, I choose you!
Choose you, buddy. I'm not gonna I'm just lost. I never find my way over to office hours. It's stuck in a Google Meet somewhere, probably. Like an infinite vortex.
All right. Awesome. So, welcome everyone to this week's office hours. My name is Andrea. If this is your first office hours, welcome. This is our weekly community touch point where we just discuss cool projects, new things, or any type of announcement. We, as usual, we are streaming this to YouTube and Twitch. So if you want to participate in the live discussion, I highly recommend that you also join the Discord. So discord.gg/flow. Join in and you can unmute anytime and ask a question. You can also write your question in the chat. Or we also have a Slido at the link in the top left. Slido, Trey, if you can if you can zoom in on that side, yeah. We bit.ly OH June 30th. That's where you can also leave your questions so that they don't get lost in the chat. All right. Today we have two team members, or actually three team members, talking about tokenomics related topics. And then we'll have time, we should have time for our usual breakout rooms on Cadence and FCL. But as usual, before we get started, just gonna whiz through our Discord peeps. So these are the people that you'll usually find lurking on Discord that you can reach out for questions. So we have our dev avocados, Bruno, Kim, and myself. We have our community managers, Carol and Trey. Our Cadence experts, Josh, Bastian, Satyam, and Alvaro. Our FCL and SDK engineers, Greg, Chase, Max, Gregor, and Yanez. The DevX team, Srinjoy, Mac, Pete, Morton, Alex, and Amit. And solutions engineering, as usual, legendary Albert. And like every week, we also want to give a spotlight to some of the open roles that we have. And this week, the spotlight is on the senior protocol engineer. So if you're passionate about protocols and you'd love to be on this FigJam board one day and be part of the Flow team, then definitely check out the role and apply if you want to be a senior protocol engineer. We also have a lot of more open roles, so be sure to check them out and apply to a role that fits you best. All right. So let's go over the agenda, which is it's very simple, but very important. So we're going to start with Lane and Paul talking about the token reward rates, and then we'll have Matt Dubé-Duval talk about liquidity vaults. And I would say that without further ado, we can get started, and I will hand things over to Lane and Paul to take it away.
Thanks, Andrea. Hey, everybody. So nice to see you all. I'm just going to set some quick context on this, and then I'm going to pass it to Paul because he's been driving this. So there was an ask a couple months ago, and there have been asks very frequently for us to talk more about the Flow token economy, and we definitely intend to do that, and we really want everyone's input here because transparently, the first version of everything that has come out around tokenomics, it has very much been an MVP. Like we were doing what felt right to have a strong foundation to build off of, but there's still tons of room for improvement, a lot of room for changes, and we want to hear from you guys what you think is going to work and not work. And so this will be a series that we do a lot more often, where we come and talk about things like transaction fees and applications of Flow, and whether or not, for example, in this case, the reward rate is right. So please keep the questions coming about all this kind of stuff, because we have every intention of talking about them with all of you. And these are really hard, important problems, and we need everybody's brains on them. So the two things that we really want to talk about today, and there's a whole bunch of tokenomics topics that we could get into, but the two that are really important today are the reward rate. And this one's important because accountability is really critical. And when we first launched mainnet back in the fall of I can't remember the year now. It just feels like a lifetime ago. Back in the fall of 2020, we set a reward rate, and we said in 19 months we're going to revisit it. And miraculously, it's been 19 months since we formally launched mainnet, which is wild. And so we want to make sure that we're being transparent with all of you about whether or not changes are going to come as they were suggested to. So Paul's going to talk all about that, and we would definitely like your input. And then liquidity vaults is a very specific application of using Flow tokens in order to facilitate DeFi. And so Matt's going to tell us about that. I'm going to pass it to them, but if there's any sort of more general questions about how we think about this stuff, I'm definitely going to be here to answer those. But Paul and Matt have been doing a really great job driving this. So Paul's going to tell us about the changes coming to the reward rate or not, and how to engage in the governance flip process if you have any other suggestions on either these topics or other ones that you want to see addressed. So we're going to really formally have a way to work through the tokenomics questions going forward with governance flips. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Paul.
Sweet. Luckily, my topic here is relatively simple, kind of. So I posted in the office hour chat a link to a governance forum post, and it links to two things. It links to a new thing called a governance flip, and it also links to a forum post specifically for that governance flip. This flip was submitted by the foundation, and it's very simple. It says the reward rate's going to remain the same. At least as far as I know, the thinking behind this is that given where everything is at right now, it's just not a good time to decrease the rewards rate. It doesn't really make any sense. The rewards rate is not really any specific problem that we have right now in the system. The initial plan said, it kind of laid out that it would be 5%, and then there's a chart where it says, after 19 months, it'll decrease to 3%. But that's written in there as like an example of what could happen. And the reality is that as we speak right now, decreasing it to 3% isn't really going to have any major impact on things like the true inflation of the system. And all that would do is like slightly decrease the rewards for node operators during a period of time where everybody's heavily impacted anyway. So the proposal is that stays the same. The way that these proposals will work is in this kind of new system that we're building out called governance flips. The idea here is that up till now, there's been a lot of, I can't actually screen share, unfortunately, because I'm on my phone because my computer is being weird. But if you want to share that, Kim, that would be fine. The idea behind governance flips is that what we'd like to do is have one process where all of the changes, like the major changes to flow, can be published, discussed, gotten feedback on, argued about. People can trash talk each other and do Italian hand gestures in the forums at each other. And so if whether that's an application level change, whether that's a protocol level change, or whether that's a governance change. So in order to do this, we introduced a new Flips repository. This Flips repository is broken down into those three categories: the application, protocol, and governance. And this flip, that basically just states, hey, this 5% rate that it's currently at should stay the same, has been published into the governance flips. The way that this will work is that this will stay live for about the next 30 days. I would like to see as many comments and kind of discussion about the impacts of this as possible in there. If this is like if it's just not a problem and more or less everybody that's interacting with it agrees with this, then there's no reason to change it. If there are problems that are surfaced and there is a significant interest in changing it, we would ask that a new flip is submitted with a new proposal of a new rate and why and all that sort of stuff so that it can be discussed. So that will all now happen in the Flips repository. So what I have two asks for people as we start to talk about these more. One is that if there's discussion, please go to these forum posts and talk about it there, because we'd like to kind of capture it for people that aren't live on this call as well. And then the second ask is that if you are interested in helping with the flip process, can you reach out to me, mention me in the office hours channels, I'll DM you. There's a very specific role, which would be an editor. The flip editor is going to be responsible for making sure that the flip is in the right format and that it kind of gets ushered through the process correctly. And so currently I'm going to do this for this governance flip. We have another one that's available that's being done by another team member, Jose. But we'd like some external people to participate in that as well. So if you are interested in participating in the flip process, please reach out to me. As it's related to the rewards rate change. I'll be managing it, and we'll be looking at it over about the next month to make sure that we get enough feedback on this and see if there's anything else that the community wants to propose related to the rewards. Did I miss anything, Lane?
No, I think you nailed it. Maybe I'll just make slightly more explicit you referenced the situation we find ourselves in. So the market downturn is what we're referring to. We want to make sure that people are being compensated for securing the network, and obviously market conditions right now make that, even if the absolute number of flow tokens stays the same, the value of those flow tokens is different now. And so we just want to make sure there isn't any additional stress on people participating in this ecosystem during our most recent crypto winter, because we don't need to add stress. We don't need to make life harder for ourselves. So that was sort of the reasoning there. If anybody had any thoughts on that, but no, Paul, I think you covered it. And we're really excited about the governance flip process, which is maybe a dumb tactical thing to be excited about, but I've been dreaming about governance flips for a really long time. Maybe we can just pause and see if there's any questions on that before we go to Matt.
Not a dumb tactical thing at all. It's like it's the most important part in a weird way, right? It's like being excited about getting the dishes done.
Yeah, totally. So any questions on that, folks? Any objections? Hoping this isn't contentious, but I'm definitely open to feedback.
Seems like we don't have any questions coming in from the Slido. Ram asks, "How's the mood of the team?" I think it's a fair question. Maybe Lane, do you want to answer it?
Yeah, I love talking about this, because I think maybe what you're referring to, Ram, is that we're in a downturn in crypto winter, and honestly, our favorite thing is we love shipping in a downturn. It's like the absolute best time to work, because all the noise is gone, and And the naysayers decide they have better things to do, and so it just like really consolidates down to the people who are super committed and who are working really hard in the ecosystem, and that reflects definitely on all of our experience working in crypto. So I'd say the mood of the team is one of like adamant determination to keep shipping really great stuff that makes this an amazing place to build. So we're all doing good, and we are internalizing the challenges of this will be, I think, the fourth crypto winter that we like the Flow team has gone through together, and so this is in some ways sort of just is par for the course and pretty standard operating procedure. But also critically, there's a ton of new folks that are around that maybe this is the first crypto winter they're experiencing, and so I think we are the mood of the team is also just ensuring that those people don't get led astray and feel good about continuing to ship when there's some negative sentiment in the ecosystem overall. But we all know that the negative and the positive sentiment can continue to rally up and down. But our job is to just keep shipping value and continue to ship experiences that people are really excited about, and making sure that all of you have the resources to ship experiences people are really excited about. So I think we're doing pretty good, Rom. How are you doing?
Well, while Rom replies, first off, I can also give him a +1 to what Lane just said. It's actually really cool to be in a team where, yeah, it's just business as usual. If anything, it's as Lane was saying, like less distractions and more doing and more building. So team is doing great. There's a couple more questions that have just come in, one in the chat and one in Slido, but they're kind of asking the same things, which is what's the plan to keep the inflation rate in check? And to build on Hoang Hai's question is, does the Flow team have any other roadmaps for increasing demand of the token?
Yeah, great question, Long. So just to address the first question first, the way that we're going to keep inflation in check is exactly what Paul just outlined, where we have this flip process for us to change it when we decide that the time is right to reduce the reward rate. So inflation is now very much in the hands of everyone in this room to make decisions about what we think the compensation for node operators and for securing the system needs to be. So we keeping it in check is going to be participating in those governance flips and keeping an eye on what people are thinking about the reward rate. I don't know if we mentioned this, but that process will have a 30-day sort of cooling off period, I guess you could call it, where there's time for people to come in and leave comments and reject or make additional suggestions to something like changing the reward rate. So the inflation rate will be kept in check with all of us discussing what we think is important and when the number needs to be changed. So that's how you'd participate there. And then Hong, to your question about more demand of Flow. So that is exactly what Matt's going to talk about next for one of the applications of possible additional use cases of Flow. And we are hoping to have a workshop pretty shortly here to brainstorm additional ideas. There's about 5 that we've been thinking through just sort of over the last couple of years. And we would love to get everybody's feedback here. So this tokenomics series of office hours where we come to you with more ideas on increasing utility for holders and possible use cases of the token is exactly what we want to talk to all of you about in these conversations. So the short answer is yes, there's a bunch more ideas about this. And we're just sharing one of them with you today because it takes some time and each of those ideas needs owners. But ideally, we would share them with all of you, and then you would bring your suggestions as well of how you think that demand should be influenced by other use cases for the token. There are currently to the second point of your question, Wong, there are no plans to burn flow tokens. That's not something that's written into the protocol. There are no rules specified about the conditions under which that would be allowable. If we felt strongly as a community that there should be the burning of flow tokens for a particular reason, that is absolutely the kind of thing that could go in a governance flip with suggestions on what the criteria for the burn tokens would be and the reason for doing that. And everything is always open for discussion. So it's not that it is strictly not allowed or anything like that, but there are not currently any plans to do that, and there would need to be a lot of thought given to the benefits for doing that and the rollout of it to make sure that people weren't impacted adversely. So the demand story we're going to be building together in this room, and we want your ideas as much as we want to bring our own, and we'll keep bringing you more ideas like this liquidity vault idea Matt's going to tell us about. And if people feel strongly about changing the supply, either positively changing the reward rate or negatively burning tokens, definitely engage in the governance flip process that Paul outlined, because those are absolutely conversations that we should all be having and decisions that we should make if we feel strongly that it'll positively impact our utility of the token and also the token economy overall.
Awesome. Cool. So there's two questions before we move on. One I can take, which is Jean asks that he's submitted an application for the dev grants. Jean, feel free to ping me directly and we can take a look. But the team usually has a couple weeks SLA to get back on any dev grants requests. So yeah, feel free to ping me about that. And then Big C1 has a question around, I'm interested to know about future applications of Flow token since so many projects on Flow are using fiat like Gaia, NBA, NFL, UFC, etc. I can take part of the question from a community perspective, and then I'd love if anyone else has anything to add. So the thing about the future applications of Flow token is like a book that's still needs to be written, right? Just because existing applications are based on stable coins doesn't mean that every project has to be. There's already a lot of community projects such as Flowatar, for example, that are based on the Flow token. It's we shouldn't be seeing as what's already on the already what's available be what's going to be available in the future. This is just the beginning, and just because some projects are using fiat, that doesn't mean that every project should or will. Lane, or if anyone else wants to add anything, I'd be happy to.
Yeah, I like totally to critically on the projects that you listed. The question asker, I forgot the name, sorry, there were a lot of those mass market projects that actually use Dapper Wallet, right? And so there's this hidden thing that basically Dapper Wallet doesn't support Flow token yet, so therefore all those projects are not really using Flow token, I think, yet. But this is something that's also on the roadmap of on the Dapper side, and that's something that we as builders with Dapper Wallet are also super interested in. I know also floats that are now available on Dapper Wallet could be interested in that, having the Flow token floats supported and stuff like this. So once some of those enablers are live, I think more mainstream projects will maybe support Flow as well. That's maybe more like an open remark, but that's what I think.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And it also is the case that I think this is an important point to remember the time frame that all of us are in. Right now, people do have fiat and they do have credit cards, and so using those and stable coins as on-ramps to start for onboarding mainstream folks who don't already hold crypto makes a lot of sense. But it will still always be the case that the lowest common denominator for using the ecosystem is the Flow native token. And so as these users are using things like Gaia and UFC and NFL projects, eventually they will absolutely want to go and find other things through Dapper Wallet or other wallets in the ecosystem. And so even though it's the case right now that people are primarily accepting fiat and credit cards, I think it's important to remember that the the one of the big mandates of Flow as a layer one was doing onboarding differently and making sure that people could get into crypto without needing to be like bona fide crypto experts. And so more and more projects for sure are going to start accepting and likely providing incentives for people to use the Flow native token, because it would just the transaction fees for using it and the overhead of using it are definitely the lowest in the ecosystem, because it's accepted everywhere and everyone has the infrastructure to deal with Flow native tokens. So I think this is something that we both to Andre and Lewis's point, these are things that we absolutely are going to see projects doing more of once they have a critical mass of users that is comfortable enough using their wallet that they would contemplate holding a different kind of asset than just fiat or a stable coin. And so I think this is just sort of a maturity of the ecosystem kind of point, but I hope that all of us, I mean, it's certainly encouraging to me that represents, as was flagged, like when Dapper Wallet supports Flow token, that represents the ability for all the people who are currently here to really easily transition into being crypto first and using Flow token as their primary token, even if that's not how they entered the ecosystem. And so in many ways, it feels like there will be sort of an opening of floodgates that happens when it's widely acceptable on the wallet that other people are using, like on Dapper Wallet, as well as other projects. So yeah, that my 2 cents on that is just like remembering where we are in the timing of the life cycle of onboarding people, because it's definitely a short-term cost that not more people are buying and holding Flow, but the long-term benefit is that the number of people who will eventually want to engage in the Flow token, because they will have been onboarded through a ramp that they already had access to, like credit cards, will be so high. And so we often talk about the time frames of bringing things like this to mainstream, and this is definitely one of those things where the time frame now is pay the cost of bringing people on with what they know and not having them purchase Flow. But further on, they will absolutely find that the ecosystem is much richer to them when they're holding Flow tokens, because everything will be open to them and transaction fees would certainly be lower if they're not paying sort of credit card processing and that kind of thing. So the good news is I think the future is really bright for people to be using Flow. But as of right now, definitely people are, projects especially, are leaning a little more towards the more widely acceptable payment options for the sake of the users that they are serving right now. And that's sort of the headspace that people are in.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry. I was just going to address the next question that came in. Yeah, so lots of them do offer both payment options. I think what people most often find when they're launching these projects is that pricing in fiat is really valuable. And so once you price in fiat, people often also purchase in fiat, and it doesn't really occur to them to purchase in Flow. But that definitely can be an option. So it's not strictly the case that they can't offer both options. But when you're an early stage startup, you have to prioritize, and prioritizing the thing that people understand makes sense. And so I think a lot of projects are choosing to just prioritize the same asset denomination that they're pricing things in, and in this case, that's typically fiat. But that, as was flagged, like Dapper Wallet will offer both options very shortly, and as well as many other wallets. So it won't be the case that you have to pick one. And then there was a question up here somewhere around engaging in the. Oh, I lost track of it. That's why you guys have the question holder thing. So
which one was it?
I can't find it now. If you had a question that didn't get answered just now, feel free to repost it.
I think there's the only question I think we haven't answered is Arca888 asks, my flows are staked with Blockdo to participate in governance. How do I proceed?
Oh, perfect. Yeah, that was it. Yeah, Paul, do you want to jump in and explain how folks use the voting tool when there is a vote, and maybe just walk us through where people will see votes when they show up?
Oh, sure. So let's see, Sarah. About 2 months ago, we went through our first vote. It's using a tool called Cast that's built by the team from Dapper Collectives. if you are staked within Blockto, the way that the voting worked at the previous vote was that any people with staked tokens would have the proper balance in order to vote within that tool, and it was at cast.fyi. Blockto users that were staked through Blockto, that also counted, because it's still like counted as staked from that account. So you would just vote with your Blockto account in that case. That said, as it's going right now, we're not doing a ton of small votes because that leads to vote paralysis and people getting bored with voting and all those sorts of things. So we're really trying to work on a nice strategy where voting can be used for very contentious things, very important things, and the flip process, which is more of a transparent process, can be used for kind of gathering consent and understanding of where everybody's at, so that particular things can go to vote. So for now, a great way that you can participate is just going and commenting on those forums and like agreeing and disagreeing and having those arguments, which is a lot of what needs to happen in the open source software development side of things. And then when things do go to vote, they will be in cast, and you will be able to vote just using your Blockto account as normal.
Perfect.
Okay, Matt, I think we're ready for you.
Yep.
We give you
All right.
first new utility case of Flow.
All right, I'm going to share my screen. Okay, can you see this presentation?
Yes.
Summary. Let's start with the first slide. All right, let's go. Hi guys. So my name is Mathieu Duval. You don't have to say it like that. I'm French. I'm head of capital markets at Dapper Labs. I joined the firm about a year ago, and my job is to help build the trading infrastructure on the Flow blockchain, as well as try and come up with interesting financial products. Before we dive in what Flow Liquidity Vaults will be, kind of wanted to take a step back and look at the DEX picture today, which is in shambles. I mean, I'm sure all of you have followed from near or far what happened to the much celebrated DeFi ecosystem on Ethereum. And all metrics really point to a very sad state of affair. TVLs are down nearly 70%, whether denominated in ETH or in Bitcoin. DeFi coins, what we used to call blue chips like Aave and Comp and Uni and many others, are also down 95%, despite being celebrated as the sure way to disrupt traditional finance. And so really, this is not something that we are very excited to replicate on Flow. And I think one of the reasons why DeFi really didn't live up to its very lofty promise is that it was really built on a machine that was just generating a lot of free tokens for everybody, right? With crazy rates of inflation. And the concept was simple, right? To acquire users, just give them a very high yield in your protocol token, and they'll come, right? They'll come deposit their assets. If you go on Compound and you lend your assets, you receive Comp tokens. If you borrow something, you also receive Comp tokens. If you trade on Uniswap, you receive Uni tokens. If you liquidity provide, you receive Uni tokens. So all of these tokens, of course, were given away for free, which increased the supply dramatically for these protocols, which at the end of the day ends up at some point when the music is over, weighing very heavily on their price dynamics. So when we're thinking DeFi on Flow, really one thing that is exceptional on the Flow ecosystem, and goes back to the question we had earlier about how we feel. We should feel fantastic, because if you look at the metrics on the Flow blockchain, whether number of transactions, number of users, all of those metrics really point up and to the right. And those are not due to the new yield farming opportunity that we have on Flow, or from onboarding Anchor on Flow. None of that, as you guys know, right? This is real business. This is real partnerships that we have on Flow. Massive Web2 companies coming to Flow and building their dApps to reach millions of users. And so the promise we've been really badgering the market about for so long is starting to realize itself. So this was a bit of a convoluted way to tell you that things that you'll see coming to DeFi on Flow will not resemble what has been done in the past and will really be built to address real needs. And if they generate good yields, those yields will be supported by real demand paid by a real borrower and not just a free creation of free tokens. All right, that being said, let's dive in now. Flow liquidity vaults. So the context for the vaults is very simple. We have a number of dApps building on Flow today in the thousands that are building very exciting dApps in many, many different fields, right? Could be gaming, could be marketplaces, could be PFP, could be any number of projects that you guys are actively building today. And all of these dApps, pretty much 99% of them, have the project of launching their own token at some point, right? Because having a token in the dApp is extremely important. In a way, this is the lifeblood that's going to allow incentives and moving value through your dApp. And so just like a layer one needs a token to make the network more secure, a dApp needs a token to align incentives and to acquire users and to grow and to have just, be able to leverage the promise of Web3. So when any dApp comes to launching a token, they all face the same issue. How do we get listed? So we're going to put the centralized exchange listing to the side for now. It could be the subject of a longer conversation during office hours another time. The lowest hanging fruit when it comes to being listed is, of course, to go on a DEX. Anybody can get listed on the DEX, right? You just have to come with your token and another token, right? 2 tokens, you put them in an AMM, and voila, you've got a price, and then you can let people trade it, bring asset A for asset B, or vice versa, and there you go. You have price dynamics. Now, this sounds super simple. However, really, when you look at the basics of that, it's not that easy for that, because the dApp, of course, they have a bunch of their own token, but they don't necessarily have the other token. That other token could be Flow, could be USDC, could be wrapped ETH on Flow. Could be any token really that exists, already on the Flow network. But as Lane said earlier, of course, Flow is the natural choice. Flow is also one of the most liquid token on DEX ecosystems today on Flow. So it just makes sense that the dApp would be looking to bring Flow as the second asset. Now, of course, the problem is very obvious. Most of these dApps, unless you're Genie or Cryptoys or some of these really large dApps that raise hundreds of millions of dollars, dApps don't necessarily have hundreds of thousands of dollars of Flow sitting in their wallet that is not at least earmarked for something, right? Could be for, I don't know, marketing, for PR, for paying the bills, for, selling it at some point down the road, or using it for any number of integration. They don't necessarily just have hundreds of thousands of dollars of Flow that they can say, oh yeah, we're going to put it in a DEX and use it to let users trade. So a lot of dApps comes to us very, very regularly and say, hey guys, can you please lend us some Flow so that we can, spin up that DEX and launch our token? And the truth is, we can't really. It's very hard. I mean, we could paper something up and do a loan, but I mean, we could do that with a handful of people. But if we do it for a few people, then we need to do it for everybody, and we certainly cannot, service an entire, thousands of borrowers, thousands of dApps would be borrowing Flow and tracking what they do and when is the loan expiring extra, and it's not our place really. However, on the other end of the equation, there are people like you holding Flow and asking us for, hey, what can I do with my Flow? Is there a better thing to do than just taking it? And so there's just a very obvious match here, and this is how it works. So when a dApp comes to wanting to launch their token, which I called here TKN, on Flow, they bring their token, because they certainly have a lot of that, right? In their treasury, in their Genesis wallet, they have tokens, so they can bring that to the vault. And users, lenders, you guys really, anybody can bring Flow and deposit it in the Flow liquidity vault. That Flow liquidity vault then spins up a DEX, right? That is made of TKN and Flow naturally, and then the DEX just is open and people can start trading out of it. Anybody can start trading with that DEX. Note here that the dApp does not own the key of the smart contract, so they can't just come and run away with users' Flow. And users don't have the key of the DEX, so they cannot run away with the TKN token. Now, it's really just one-sided liquidity. You might have seen this before from other projects on Ethereum, like Ondo Finance. There are a few tweaks that we believe make the product slightly easier and completely cancel the risk of liquidation. So let me go through a bit more details here. What's in it for the lender of Flow? So of course, the lender of flow is not going to do that just because they want to help the dApp, right? There is a very clear reason to do this, and it's collecting an interest rate. Now, the interest rate, interestingly here, is paid in TKN, not in flow, meaning you, as a flow holder, deposit flow in the flow liquidity vault. That flow is used then to spin up the liquidity pool. The yield that you're going to collect, 10, 15, 20% per annum, is going to be paid in TKN, which means that you are all of a sudden gaining exposure to a new token launching on flow completely passively. You haven't participated in the IDO. You have not done any KYC. You have not been following Twitter and Discord actively to know when the token was launching. No, just deposited flow in a flow liquidity vault, waiting for it to be picked up by a project. You might select the project which you want your flow liquidity vault to be used for, but it's not necessarily true. You could just have flow being deposited in the vault, and that vault then invests or deploys that flow into a number of DEXs. So really the upside here is that you can just deposit the flow, earn the interest rate in a number of tokens, and sit back, not having to follow really the action on the flow ecosystem and just collecting all of these interest payments in tokens. So this again is a high yield opportunity. Now, why is it high yield? Well, because if dApps really look for flow actively and they need that flow, well, they are ready and willing to pay a higher interest rate for this. You are really solving a real problem here. And that means that the borrower is willing to pay a significant yield for that. Now, of course, once the dApp establishes firm liquidity through the growth of its network, for example, the yield will decrease, right? A dApp that is launching in a couple of weeks might pay 20% per annum for borrowing flow for 3 to 6 months. Once the dApp has, got its sea legs and is established and has a lot more users, they're not going to pay 20% per year because they're going to have a lot more users willing to lend them some flow. So maybe the yield is going to go to 10, then to 5, then to 3%, and then disappear entirely because people are willing to deposit their tokens, TKN, in the DEX, a regular DEX this time, a block to swap or an increment by DEX, and just do what other liquidity providers do and just collect the trading fee. So here I really want to stress the fact that the high yield is not again paid by free tokens, free inflation. This is really because you, the lenders, the future lenders, will be lending to a real borrower, the dApp, who really needs your token for a finite amount of time. Now a bit more details here. Before I take on a few questions, this is kind of the finer prints. So flow liquidity vaults, as I said, are limited in time. The longer the dApp has to borrow the flow, the higher the APY, because of course the higher the risk for you. And we'll talk about the risk in just a couple of moments. Flow liquidity vaults are limited in size, meaning dApps don't necessarily need to borrow millions of dollars worth of flow, right? Just $500,000 to $1 million is usually more than enough to have a good slippage on a first DEX. So that means that these flow liquidity vaults will be limited in size. And so first come, first serve, right? The first people who show up to lend their flow, then they are the one who will be lending the flow and collecting the yield in TKN in that example. And finally, lender and dApp share the impermanent loss, which is a very interesting profile here. So if TKN flow appreciates, meaning let's say TKN doubles in price whilst flow stays stable, the dApp takes the negative impermanent loss. The dApp pays the impermanent loss because you guys as provider of flow, a lender of flow, you're going to receive the TKN interest payment. That interest payment is worth a lot more because now TKN has doubled in price. If TKN flow depreciates, if TKN collapses 90% while flow stays stable, and you, the lender, take the majority of the impermanent loss. And so I graphed the payout profile here of getting involved in a flow liquidity vault versus buying outright TKN. And as you can see, it is an asymmetric profile, right? So if TKN price goes down a lot, you are still, the lender of flow are still set to lose a bit of money, which is normal. And we'll see exactly why. And if TKN explodes, well, you will not make the entire upside, right? Because you have not put all your capital at risk by buying TKN, but your interest payment increase in dollar PNL in that example, meaning that yes, if TKN increases a lot, you are set to participate in that increase. Now, let's double click a little on the TKN flow scenario where TKN goes down a lot. Now, remember that in a constant product AMM, so the liquidity providers provide two assets, right? Here in that case, the dApp provides one asset, lenders provide the flow asset. Now, of course, if TKN collapses, what happens is that within the DEX, within the flow liquidity vault, really the balance of flow goes down a lot, right? And the balance of FLD goes up a lot. That is the magic of constant product AMM. And again, we can drill into this deeper another time. But just take my word for it if you're not familiar with constant AMM. Basically, the way it works is that everybody will start selling the thing that goes down, right? So the pool will be buying TKN because people are going to be selling TKN to it, and people will take away flow, right? And so if there is very little flow in the pool at the end of the whatever loan tenor is, maybe 3 months, maybe 6 months, then how does the DApp will be able to return the flow to the lenders? Well, it won't be. It just won't be, right? There is no way that the DApp is then able to buy flow at an increased price. So in those cases, the DApp would have the option to reimburse the flow lenders using the TKN token instead of flow. And importantly, if the DApp exercises that option, they have to use the inception price used at the beginning of the flow liquidity vault, meaning that if a price of, let's say, 20 cents was used to spin up the first liquidity vault between TKN and flow, then that is the price that is going to be used to repay the lenders of flow, which is interesting because that price, that 20 cents, is not going to be arbitrary. It's most likely going to be linked to either the last IDO price, the last valuation round, the last VC round, or what have you, and that will be one of the parameters that the DApp will use to attract flow lenders. Of course, the lower the price, the more attractive for the lender to be involved in that specific liquidity vault. So, as I said, flow liquidity vault carry risk for their lenders. They're really a mix between lending protocol and LPing directly on a DEX. So, in summary, flow liquidity vaults will allow dApps built on flow to source flow and spin up liquidity pools in a systematic and very transparent way. Very repeatable way. Instead of having to come to us, instead of having to distribute, liquidity pool incentives and distribute free money, they can just set these opportunities, which are limited in time and size, and keep a much better control on the kind of incentive and the cost of these incentives that they're going to distribute to the community. The yield paid to the lenders will be high, but they don't come without risks. Flow liquidity vaults will allow flow holders to gain exposure to new tokens launched on the chain passively. Which this is the true innovation here. Flow holders will be able to lock their flow in flow liquidity vaults, sit back, and watch their interest rate account go up from every new token that is launched on flow and that decides to leverage flow liquidity vaults. And finally, flow liquidity vaults will cement flow as the de facto counter assets on DEXs, which will increase the amount of flow taken away from circulating supply. Because of course, if that flow is in DEXs, then it's not out there on Coinbase and Kraken being sold. And so the more tokens launched on flow, the more flow is going to get launched on DEX ecosystems on the flow chain, and creating more positive catalysts for flow price in the future. So that was a lot. I hope it all made sense, and now I'd be very happy to take your questions.
Thanks, Matt. Super interesting. I'm just checking the Slido. Doesn't seem like we have any questions there yet, but I see someone writing in the chat. If anyone has questions, you can also feel free to just unmute and ask them. You don't have to type them. So the first question is, any timeline for the launch of FLV?
Yeah, so I think we're very close to testnet. A team is building Flow Liquidity Vault coming from Vietnam. Actually, I'm very, very excited about what they're building. We're finalizing a few of the last touches for that product. I'm hoping that we have an MVP late July to be able to power the next token launch on Flow. Now, going back to market conditions, as you can imagine, many dApps have kind of slammed the brakes on token launches because it's kind of hard to get an exciting launch out there these days. So this actually helps us a little bit in that sense, gets us a bit more time. But we're certainly hoping that, midsummer 2022, we can ship that opportunity and make this available to dApps. And then dApps will be able to change either the price or the yield to attract flow deposits and spin up their own flow liquidity vaults.
Awesome. And how do people keep in touch? How will they find out when it's available?
Well, be very sure to advertise that dApp. It's an external team building this, right? It's not built by the Flow Protocol team or by Dapper Labs. So we'll make sure that it's as visible as possible. We'll invite them to office hours so that they can show you what they built exactly. Repeat a bit of what I said, but in more details, and show you the UI UX that they're putting together.
Awesome. Yeah, and we'll definitely help there. We'll make sure that everyone finds out about it. Cool. And the next question is there any wallet limitation or can it be accessed by any Flow wallets?
This is going to be, I don't have the details. I'm pretty sure they're building with FCL integration in mind. So that's what I expect.
Awesome. Cool.
So any wallet is supports FCL.
Oh, sorry, Matt. Didn't mean to cut you off.
No.
Arcade 8. I think this goes back exactly to the point about how easily accessible and widely available Flow native token is. So because all wallets support Flow native token, the Flow, like these token launches would sort of have their own landing pages most likely, where you would go and fund with your wallet. And so, as Matt said, they're going to be FCL compatible, so that any wallet will work with these dApps. And then because all you're really doing is transferring Flow native token, that's something that all wallets are enabled to do, including Ledger. So the exact mechanics, I think that's right. We should wait for the team to walk you through it, but it would be supported by any wallet by nature of the kind of operation that's happening here. So, but it probably wouldn't be something that you would see directly in the wallet UI. You would see it on the dApp page for the tokens that are launching, if that answers your question. And feel free to jump in, Matt, if I misspoke.
I think that's absolutely right.
There's two other questions which are kind of related. The first one is, will it be possible to contribute to wrapped ETH liquidity vaults as well? And
so only if there is a dApp that sorry to interrupt, just answering that one. Only if there is a dApp willing to pay to promote wrapped ETH liquidity, which I don't see coming anytime soon. But who knows, right? Maybe a dApp says, actually, because of that specific use case for our token, we want the second asset not to be Flow but to be wrapped ETH on Flow. As a result, we want to attract wrapped ETH on Flow deposits, so we will be paying blah blah blah, as I said, but switch Flow for wrapped ETH. Absolutely possible. I haven't seen it, but there might be a dApp out there that's very very specific use case, and so yes, technically that could be done.
Awesome. I had a follow up as well. Like I know right now with Flow staking, like it has Ledger integration, but the liquidity pools, I guess, you'd be able to do it with Ledger as well. Sorry, just one.
Yeah, that was the point I was just making about how fundamentally using the liquidity vaults is just transferring Flow native token to one of these dApps, and Ledger does support transfers, so it should be supported.
Sweet. I've been waiting a long time for something like this to come to Flow, so super excited. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Wade. There's also another question on Slido, which says, in effect, FLV functions as a fund, giving passive exposure to many TKNs. Is there an equivalent to a fund manager, or are all TKNs granted access?
So very, very importantly, it's not really a fund, because fund presumes ad hoc management, discretionary management. Here, there is nothing discretionary. Everything's coded up from the start. The way it will work is that Flow Liquidity Vault, there's going to be one for each dApp that wants to start one. So probably hundreds of them. Some of them will not be funded because the dApp will be not paying a yield high enough to justify the risk. We'll use a price that is, 10x A60Z price. And so people will be like, what the hell is this? So some FLVs are just not going to be economically attractive to enough users. So it does give exposure to many, many future TKNs, right? So Genie token and Moxie token and Starly token and DLT token and what have you, any dApp that will need this. So it's really, and the payout will be completely deterministic, right? You will be able, we're actually working on this with the team building it, there will be a scenario tool that you can use and say, okay, in the scenario where TKN goes in that direction versus Flow, this is exactly what I get at the end, right? Everything is completely a closed formula. And that's important. There's no Olympus style, investments there where people can just run away and invest and buy, sell, none of that. Right? This is all interest payments. And if the market indeed goes against the dApp, then the principal is paid back with whatever is left in the vault. And that is what FLV will do.
Awesome. And then the last question that is similar to the wrapped ETH one, but slightly different, is any plans to have cross-chain tokens in FLV? Although we kind of already answered it.
Yeah, FLV will be built on Flow. Now, to be completely honest, it's not something that's is only needed on the Flow chain. This is something that many dApps building on many chains would need. I certainly hope that being the first to market with this and making as much noise as possible when the system takes off, this is a true financial innovation in my mind. It's a very interesting way to get exposure to new tokens. It has never been done by any other chain. The closest thing, as I said, is Ondo Finance, but Ondo Finance has a liquidation aspect because the principal has to be repaid in the deposit asset. So here it would have to be repaid in Flow no matter what, meaning that as soon as TKN price starts to go south, the dApp gets liquidated. And it's not great for anybody involved. So we decided to take another turn, and the product changed quite a bit through that. So to answer your question, no token not built on Flow. It will have to be bridged on Flow if you wish. And then once they bridge it to Flow, then they can take the liquidity and maybe use a Thor chain or something like that to bring back the liquidity to their chain. But that's not something we're optimizing for.
Well, super excited for it. I just want to leave room for anyone who may want to unmute and ask a question live. If anyone has any questions, now's the time.
I had another quick question or idea. I've seen you tossed around with some staking platforms and apps, around if you stake in the platform or provide liquidity, whatever it is, you get an NFT to kind of show that you're participating and things like that. Is that kind of something that is being floated around, a unique NFT to say that you're kind of an early adopter of these kind of liquidity pools and things like that on Flow? Not sure if that makes sense, but yeah.
I don't know if Matt?
Oh, yeah, sorry, I didn't hear it. I think there's one feed that I'm not receiving.
Oh, sorry. So
what's the question?
Basically, I'm just asking, would there ever be or consider to be NFTs given to users of this dApp, effectively just to show that you're an early adopter and things like that, or kind of increase user participation, stuff like that? I've seen it kind of floated around on other protocols, and I think it's a cool idea.
Sorry, are you asking if there's going to be an airdrop of NFTs for community support?
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be an airdrop, just an NFT that's unique to people that are kind of early adopters of the liquidity pools on Flow and things like that.
That's a good idea. I don't know. I don't know if we planned that yet, but we've talked about having participation tokens for things last fall. There was FitFest, people contributed. And so we're going to go around. I don't know if Jeff's on this call. He had thought about it a little bit. So there weren't plans to, but I love that idea. So I totally, we should make sure that there's a way for people who are participating in this to indicate so on their profile or something like that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I got the idea from early on, in the Illuvium IDO, they gave balancer NFTs to anyone that participated over a certain threshold. And I thought that was a really cool idea, and it ended up working really well, and the community kind of got around those NFTs, and they're kind of OG status now, and I find it really cool. And it was always floated around where if you continue to participate in the liquidity pool, you would have access to maybe winning a drop of a rare NFT, things like that. So it's kind of a cool double utility piece. But yeah, thanks for taking the question.
Yeah, any reputation based sort of, and I'm using the term reputation really loosely there, but projects that show history of someone consistently participating in something over time and then gate access to either participating in other things or even just community events. I think that's going to become really important as the ecosystem grows for all of us to sort of sort through who's who in the zoo. And definitely there's sort of a credibility element to who do I reach out to, who has a badge of honor of knowing how this stuff works and who can I talk to. So as a more general point, even to just Flow liquidity vaults, if anyone wants to work on a badge system where you earn badges as a result of participating, I think there's a ton of use cases for that across the entire ecosystem, but totally this could be the first example of it. And I think we'd love to hand out badges for people who are participating, or badges or NFTs for people who participate to show that they have been around for a long time.
Awesome.
Tell us all about it.
Yeah, so Wait, thanks for the suggestion. I think it's a great idea to, have. I think your idea was actually two different ideas. One is to reward early adopters with like rare NFTs, right? So things that may be like have marketplace value or market value. But the other idea, which is what Lane was talking about, is also super interesting, which is kind of having badges of honor, or no, badges of participation, which end up being badges of honor, of like being part of specific things in the community, right? And I've also been a super big fan of like, how do we create a reputation system on Flow? And the cool news is that there already is like a POAP that's already being used by a lot of the community on Flow, which is called Float. So floats.city. And there you can create an event for whatever you want, and you can decide and when you create the event, people can claim a float to kind of, which creates an NFT, which represents that they were part of that event, right? So kind of like a POAP for Flow. And the event creator can decide how the claiming works, whether it's open to all, whether it's password protected, whether there's one-time use codes that people can use, whether it can only be manually awarded, right? If you really want to lock down who has that float. You can also like have a ticket to like a price point to mint the float. So this is just to say that there's already that platform in place, and even if FLV or whatever project kind of comes in and wants to do something like that, they can just leverage that, and the whole infrastructure is there. And the cool thing is that floats also interact with a open ID system called Emerald ID, so that all the Discords in the Float community have it. So if you have a specific float, you get access to specific channels on Discord. You get access to maybe specific airdrops. Anyways, just letting you know that there's already this, and if you want to check it out, it's floats.city.
Thanks. No, super excited.
Yeah, and thanks, Jacob. Awesome. Cool. Well, we're out of time, actually, unfortunately. Any last minute questions or comments from anyone?
Just a last comment that we really want to do more of these around ideating utility for Flow. So please feel free to bring those ideas. You can ping me with them, you can ping Paul with them, you can put them in a governance flip. And we're going to do lots more of this. So super appreciate everybody's questions and feedback today. And this is just the beginning of many.
This is great. I think this was one of the super interesting office hours, and really looking forward to more of them. And if you have ideas, feel free to reach out anytime, and we can make sure that your ideas are incorporated into the future ones. All right. Well, with that, thank you to our speakers. Thank you, Lane. Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Matt. And thank you to everyone who contributed to the discussion. Welcome all the new members who have discovered Flow, whether via permissionless or other reasons. Welcome to the community. And have a great rest of your week, and see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Louis.
Alright, nice to see you guys. Bye-bye.
Party on, party people.